In 1998, John Paul Miller was convicted of hitting a woman with his truck multiple times. According to court documents, John Paul Miller hit the woman and then drove off as she hung on to his hood for approximately 100 yards. Also, according to those documents, John Paul Miller taped up his license plate to allegedly conceal his identity. In 2022, John Paul Miller looked to expunge that conviction from his records. A huge shout out to Steph Case Files on TikTok. She has obtained audio from that court hearing. Take a listen.
I can begin. My client, born May 20th, 1979, seeking a pardon for his assault and battery of high and aggravated nature. The incident date is listed as February 11th, 1998, and client pled guilty in June of 1999. He received a 4-year sentence, suspended to 3 years probation. Probation was completed without incident, and it's been 20 years since then. My client has completely turned his life around. He's got a family, wife, kids. He started a ministry. And so we are seeking a pardon for this to restore his civil liberties. As our religion and Lord teaches forgiveness, we're seeking that from the state. So I'll turn it over to my client to explain a little bit more about his life and changes since then, the last 20 years.
First of all, when it happened over 20 years ago, the incident was I was driving a work truck through a wake zone after a hurricane, and the person that brought the charge or whatever said that the waves of the wake zone, I guess, knocked them over or something. And when I went to court, I was young and I didn't have a lawyer and didn't know anything. And a lady that was in the courthouse just told me to plead guilty. And so I went in to plead guilty, and the person who was bringing the charges didn't even show up because they had 3 or 4 warrants out for their arrest. I never even met the person or saw the person ever in my entire life. And I didn't even know that I had this charge until a few years ago. We have a bunch of lieutenants and policemen in our congregation. And
okay, Mr. Miller.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Miller, let me tell you something. I'm sure your attorney will tell you we don't retry cases here. We just can't do anything about that. We just have the facts of the case as it is before. What we're trying to look at now is how have you changed? Why do you feel like you deserve a pardon, and some of the things you've been doing since all this happened?
I've started a church that has over 500 people in it each week. I started a homeless ministry that specifically takes vets that are homeless off the streets, gets them jobs with people in our congregation. We get them a place to live, get them transportation once they've completed our courses. I started a Christian private school that is the most affordable school in all of Myrtle Beach, so that any Christian family that wants to put their child in a private school can do so. Like I said, I didn't even know this charge was on my record until recently. And you know, I would love to have the pardon just because I think it's the right thing for me, and I think it's the right thing to do in general.
How's it going to help you? What are you looking to do?
I guess I'm just looking for a little bit of forgiveness, and I think that it would, you know, with the lieutenants and the policemen in our congregation, just, you know, it just adds to my, I guess, the things that I've accomplished in the past 20-something years. It just feels weird having a charge on your record like that, especially one of how it took place. It's just
And I think that because it's been 20 years since the completion of his probation, we're looking to restore civil liberties, and especially for a leader of a church, a person who's started educational programs and homeless vet programs. I think that restoring civil liberties for a man like this is important as an American and as a South Carolina resident.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and I appreciate the clarity there. And I'm not going to ask you about giving back to your community because your whole life looks like you're headed back, giving back to your community through your ministry, sir. Is there anything, Mr. Miller, that you haven't been able to tell us that you want to make sure this board knows today?
No, sir. I guess that sums it up. Thank you for your time.
Well, we appreciate you appearing today. Anything in closing, Mr. Brown?
Just that it's been 20 years again, and my client's, the change in his life is, it was brought on not by the state, it's by his own self-doing. And I think it's night and day from the 90s to now of what he's done, what he's accomplished, not for himself and his family, but also for the community as a whole in the state of South Carolina. And I think that warrants the restoration of civil liberties. He knows that the charge won't be removed from his record, but it's the forgiveness based on the life that he's lived, the exemplary life he's lived, and the goals and rewards that he sought for not only himself, his family, and the rest of South Carolina.
Now remember, in family court filings a few weeks ago from John Paul Miller's ex-wife, Alison, she accuses John Paul Miller of obtaining the assistance of the police chief to help him expunge his record. She says that John Paul Miller wanted to do it so he could allegedly buy weapons, because as a convicted felon, you're not legally allowed to do that. I have spoken with the husband of the victim from this incident back in 1998, and he says he remembers it clear as day. He says he even remembers what the temperature was like that day. For certain reasons, I'm not going to go into the details of our conversation, but they certainly tell a different story than what you just heard from John Paul Miller. And I do have a few questions that maybe someone in the comments section can answer. In hearings like this, in regards to a serious conviction like this, do they not hear out victims? Do they not take their testimonies? Do they not speak with people who are associated with John Paul Miller? Would they not talk with Alison, his ex-wife? Would they not talk about their divorce? I'm just curious. I genuinely don't know. And I wonder, was John Paul Miller the only one there speaking that day? Obviously, we're looking at this from a hindsight. We're looking back, knowing what we know now. But I simply found this audio fascinating, and just another piece of a very complicated puzzle.